I'm always hopeful. I don't know how to do this work without hope. I believe that repetition is important. I believe that the same message, although sometimes we feel, do we need to... this is something that I learned from Angela Davis, the African American academic and activist. She talks a lot about repetition. And I believe that the repetition and having these conferences and developing our message and saying it more clearly is key to advancing our nation, in the sense that we can all live our most powerful and empowered lives, and that's what the promise of Aotearoa New Zealand is. And it's about living that potential through partly an ethnic advantage.
We definitely can say that health in New Zealand needs to improve. The health system in New Zealand needs to improve in order to provide services that are fit for purpose, that meet the needs of all people. So we heard some questions today that had some examples of where our health system is failing, and we're very pleased to hear that feedback, and we want to continue to hear that feedback. One of the things, or the hallmarks of our new health system, is whānau voice. And whānau voice means that our health policies, our health funding, our health strategies are informed by the voices of people for which the health services are there to deliver improved health outcomes for. The other thing is about, in setting up localities, that is actually about a new way of thinking about how to fund health services so that they're actually more meaningful and fund the right things. So we're just at the beginning of health reform. Te Aka Whaiora, the Māori Health Authority, is working very closely with Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand in order to ensure that equity is high on the agenda and informs all that we do. It's fair to say that there are tremendous challenges in the health sector. One of the challenges is around workforce. A really key, strong question came today about what about the amazing people who've come to our country, who are doctors, who are professors, who are qualified people, who are working, driving in taxis, working in restaurants. More needs to be done to actually utilise and harness and support and grow and encompass and encourage all of people to be able to contribute to health.
Passion. Patience tinged with a bit of impatience, understandably. So, in terms of my role in health and the conversation that we've just had around that, there were some fantastic topics and questions raised, real challenges that we need to rise to. I've asked for a bit of patience from people to continue on to understand the reform that we're in the middle of and how much time and energy and effort that's going to take. But that doesn't mean that everything is delayed and we're not going to be doing anything about these really important topics that are raised. Topics like the fact that we've got some really highly skilled, highly trained people amongst us in the midst of a workforce shortage that we're not allowing to work. How is that? That doesn't make sense. So we need to go back in terms of the system, unpick that and figure out how to solve those sorts of problems. That's only one of many of the things, the really important conversations that were raised today. But I loved from the very beginning, Mervyn talked about what I know as kintsugi, he called it wabi-sabi, that Japanese art that is about hope, isn't it? It's about something that's been broken being repaired to be even more beautiful than it was in its whole original state. That's a message of hope. Abbas, that I haven't actually heard him speak before, and what a powerful message and story he has. I was fighting back the tears listening to what he was saying, because you think about humans having to go through that. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And so our response to that is so important. And I even started thinking about the term refugee. It's such a loaded term, and it's I know what it's like being a member of the rainbow community and having been in Australia for all of the conversation during the marriage equality debate, and choices about my life being made by other people who had no experience of that and who couldn't possibly understand were pontificating in some cases about things that are very personal to me, and how disempowering that feels, and how angry it made me to hear other people throwing things that are intimate about my life around as a as a political conversation to have. And it's the same, I think, with, even this concept of refugee. These are people that are, through no fault of their own, displaced from their homes and from their jobs and from families. And unfortunately, it becomes, when we assign a term like refugee, it becomes boiled down to a conversation that people have, that they take an opinion about, that they maybe don't have a considered opinion. And so I think getting these voices heard, getting stories heard, is critically important. That's one of the things that I want to be doing more in the health system, rather than reporting on numbers that people don't tend to care about. I want to hear people's stories, and I want to raise those voices up. So yeah, it's been a fantastic conference. I'm so pleased to have been a part of it.
I think it's twofold. One side of the coin is that there is no message, that it's just, I want to make you happy and I want to make you laugh. But then the other side of the coin, and I think these two things have to go hand in hand, right? Like, they can't exist without the other. As a comedian, you have to have the desire to just make people laugh, right? To just make people happy without trying to wedge in a message. Because when you do that, then the comedy becomes disingenuous, right? It's not real. But when you focus on that, and you truly have a desire to have positive change, then the message will come naturally, right? And it will feel more genuine, it will feel more real. And that's kind of the mode of operation that I've always taken in my career, is just focus on making people laugh, but don't be closed to your natural desires to speak about something that you care about, and let it just naturally come through. And that's what I've done, and I feel like it's served me well in my career, to just let it be real and authentic, rather than trying to force feed. When I give a message, I hope that audiences feel the authenticity, that this is coming from a real place. That's always been the mode of operation. But the message, I think, within that is that comedy is the perfect Trojan horse for messages, right? Especially when it's natural and real and authentic. Comedy being messages being wedged into comedy is the perfect way to feed them to people, rather than in a discourse that can become heated or can become adversarial at times. Comedy is the perfect way, because when people laugh, the guard goes down. When the guard goes down, people are more open to ideas and concepts and thoughts and challenging viewpoints.
I think the next time we do this, it would be amazing if there were twice as many people, 3 times as much space. There isn't a lot of opportunity for conversation. There's a lot of being spoken to. There's a lot of listening. Nothing wrong with that. But I think the true value of this, conferences like this, are the connections that you make. And so, the environment needs to be able to support that, and the design of the program, if you like, needs to be able to support that as well. So, yeah.
So I think having Sakar on the panel with me was I guess, a challenge to me. Thinking about his ideas are in the future, and we're partway there, but it's a real challenge for us to think that's where we could end up. And my challenge is to think how I can get local government and central government to start to think like that. I guess break some of the shackles and not control this mahi quite as much as we do.
I think for the funding tips and tricks, the key message I want to get across is as a panel member, our job is to spend the money, spend it all. So we're not trying to hold it back and fight against the applicants. Actually, we're trying to help them to get the funds out. So it's important for, I think, all the applicants or members from the ethnic communities to understand that the government have funds available to help them, and we want to give the money out. So make sure you have a really good application, and things I mentioned in the meeting today, to have a really good COCO. You have really clear messages telling people your capacity, what's your objectives, what cost and budget, and also what a measurable delivery outcomes you can manage to get out. So this is one thing, but also how to translate. Lots of people are passionate about their projects and things they want to do, but how do you translate that passion or transform that passion into something measurable, deliverable, and tangible? Is the key.
I hope this is every year, and I hope, because it's so enriching for everyone, and I hope that many people from different backgrounds come and get together to hear this, what we have to say, what all of us have to say. Yes, that will be a better country if we actually have a dialogue with different people from different backgrounds. Yes.
I guess overall, in terms of celebrating the diversity, that was sort of the key message. Celebrating the diverse communities in New Zealand, that was a great message to be part of it.
I should say congratulations to Ministry for Ethnic Communities to organize this beautiful conference. And I'm really glad I'm living in this country, New Zealand, and being recognized those minor groups, their need, and see so many people, include Pākehā, Asian or Middle Eastern or Muslim, different communities. We really see here as our country. We want to contribute. We want to share our values. And I think that's great, the government to looking at this valuable to organize this kind of the conference to bring people closer. It's not only just for one-off, it's going to be ongoing. Hopefully can improve the awareness and improve more culturally convergence, not only through art or through conferences, through all sorts of platforms. So this is great. I hope this can carry on and it can help changing some policies in some stage.
Yeah, I guess it's just, hopefully there's more opportunities for us to wānanga, for us to really start, taking these conversations, beyond just, just one-on-one conversations, but actually if you start working together as a community. Yeah.